When I was a kid growing up in a small adobe house near Red Mesa, Arizona, strange things were part of life. My family always talked about spirits, good ones and bad ones, that roamed the desert. The elders warned us about creatures that weren't human, things that crept in the dark. I never believed them until the night I saw one myself. It was a warm evening, the kind where the air feels heavy and still. I was maybe 10, left alone with my younger cousin Lila, in our house while everyone else was out. The place was simple, just one big room with a wood stove in the center and a few beds against the walls. Our dog, Rusty, was curled up outside, his chain clinking softly as he shifted. I was drawing on some scrap paper when Rusty started growling. Low at first, then louder, like he sensed something wrong. I froze, my pencil hovering over the page. Lila looked up from her book, her eyes wide. I stepped to the window, peering into the dusk. The desert stretched out, all shadows and sand, but nothing moved. Then Rusty's growl turned into a frantic bark, and I heard something. A heavy shuffle, like footsteps dragging through the dirt. My heart started pounding. I told Lila to stay put and ran to lock the door, but before I could reach it, the knob turned. I stumbled back as the door creaked open, and something stepped inside. It was tall, so tall it had to duck under the frame. Its body was covered in coarse, dark hair that seemed to swallow the light. The thing moved awkwardly, its long arms swinging like they didn't belong to it. Its face, I'll never forget it, was almost human, but wrong, with deep-set eyes that glinted like wet stones. It smelled like damp earth and something sour, like meat left out too long. I screamed, grabbing Lila and pulling her toward the stove to put something, anything, between us and it. The creature lumbered forward, circling the stove. I could hear its breath, ragged and deep, as it reached out with a clawed hand. I pushed Lila under the nearest bed, crawling in after her. The space was tight, the dirt floor cold against my palms. I held my breath, praying it wouldn't find us. Lila was shaking, her nails digging into my arm. Then I felt it. The thing's hand wrapped around my ankle, yanking hard. I kicked, screaming, and clung to Lila, who was sobbing but holding on tight. The creature was strong, so strong I thought it'd rip me away. But we pressed ourselves against the bed frame, refusing to let go. It stopped pulling and started clawing at the bed, trying to drag it from the wall. The wood groaned, and I saw its hairy arm through the gap, muscles bulging under the fur. My mind went blank with fear, and I don't know how long we stayed like that, just holding on, waiting for it to break through. Then suddenly it stopped. The room went quiet, so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I didn't dare move. Lila was crying softly, and I squeezed her hand, trying to stay brave. I don't know how much time passed, but I couldn't stay under the bed forever. I crawled out, my legs trembling, and checked the room. It was empty, the door slightly ajar. I crept toward it, my bare feet sticking to the cool floor. That's when I saw it again, just outside, its face pressed against the gap in the doorframe. Those eyes locked onto mine, unblinking, and I felt like it was looking straight into my soul. I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, my chest heaving. I didn't sleep that night, and neither did Lila. We sat huddled together until the sun rose, painting the desert gold. To this day, I don't know what it was. Some say it's a spirit, a skin changer that wears animal hides to do evil. Others think it's something older, something that's been here longer than us. All I know is that I still check the locks every night, and I never go out alone after dark. The desert holds secrets, and I learned the hard way that some are better left alone. It was the 25th of December, 2004, and I was driving to my family's house near Willow Creek, Virginia, for the holidays. I'd borrowed my dad's old truck, the kind with a temperamental heater and a radio that only picked up static. The road I took, Hollow Road, was a lonely stretch, cutting through fields and patches of dense forest. It was barely dawn, the sky a bruised gray, and a thick fog clung to the ground, swirling around the tires like ghostly fingers. I kept my headlights on, though they didn't do much to cut through the haze. I was tired, my eyes gritty from a long night of wrapping gifts, and the cold seeped through the truck's cracked windows, making my breath puff out in clouds. I figured I'd see deer or maybe a stray dog, but the road was empty, too empty. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Then, up ahead, my headlights caught something moving in the middle of the lane. At first, I thought it was a kid, small and hunched, shuffling along. My stomach twisted. Nobody should be out here. Not at this hour. Not in this weather. I slowed down, gripping the wheel tighter. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't a kid. The figure was thin, unnaturally so, its limbs like sticks poking through a pale matted coat of fur or hair that shimmered wetly in the light. It moved with a jerky sway, like it wasn't used to walking upright. I stopped the truck about 10 yards away, my heart thudding in my chest. The thing turned, and I saw its eyes, huge, yellow, glowing like lanterns in the fog. Its face was a mess of tangled hair, no nose or mouth I could make out, just those eyes boring into me. I froze, my hands slick with sweat on the wheel. Before I could think, it raised a bony arm and threw something at the truck. I flinched, expecting a rock to crack the windshield, but it was an apple. Rotten, bursting open as it hit the glass, leaving a smear of brown juice. I slammed on the brakes harder than I meant to, and the truck lurched. When I looked up, the thing was gone, swallowed by the fog. My pulse was racing, and I sat there, staring at the empty road, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. The apple's stench crept into the cab, sour and wrong, like something dead. I don't know why, but I felt a pull to find it, to know what it was. Maybe it was shock, maybe stupidity, but I started driving again, slower now, scanning the fog for any sign of it. The road curved, and I kept expecting those yellow eyes to flash out at me, but there was nothing, just silence and the endless gray. I drove for what felt like forever, my knuckles white, until I reached my family's house. I parked and sat in the truck for a minute, my breath shallow, before I worked up the nerve to get out. When I walked inside, my cousin Nate was already there, brewing coffee. I must have looked awful because he stopped and stared. I told him what happened, my voice shaking as I described the creature, the apple, those eyes. He didn't laugh. Instead, he told me about old stories from the area, tales of spirits the locals called gray wraiths. They were said to haunt the roads, looking like men but not quite, always covered in pale fur. He said they threw fruit, apples, pears, whatever they found, because it was their way of marking you, warning you to stay away. He'd never seen one, but his neighbor had years back. They'd found their porch littered with smashed apples one morning. No footprints, no explanation. That night, their dog went crazy, and they heard a scream from the woods, high, unnatural, like nothing human. I didn't sleep well that night. Every creak of the house made me jump, and I kept picturing those yellow eyes watching me through the window. I've driven hollow roads since, but never in the fog, and never alone. Whatever I saw that morning wasn't just some animal. It felt like it knew me, like it wanted me to see it. And deep down, I'm terrified it's still out there, waiting for me to cross its path again. When I was 7, my mom moved us to a trailer on the edge of Green Hollow, Tennessee, right where the forest started. It was just the two of us, and the place was a gift from my grandma after Mom left my dad. My room had 2 windows, one facing the dirt road, and the other looking out at the woods. Dark, tangled pines that seemed to whisper secrets when the wind blew. After school, I'd climb trees with my friend Tommy from next door. Mom would watch us from the porch, her cigarette glowing in the dusk, making sure we didn't wander too far. One afternoon we were out in the woods, scrambling up a big oak. The air was thick with the smell of sap and earth. I was perched on a branch, laughing as Tommy tossed pine cones at me, when he suddenly went quiet. His face turned pale, and he pointed up, his hand shaking. I followed his gaze and saw it. A creature, maybe 5 feet tall, crouched on a branch higher up. Its eyes were huge, round, and golden, glowing even in the daylight. Its body was covered in patchy brown fur, like something out of a storybook, but its face was strange, almost sad, with a small nose and a mouth that quivered like it was scared. It breathed fast, a wheezy sound that made my skin crawl. I wasn't afraid at first, more curious, like I'd found something secret. Tommy wasn't so calm. He slid down the tree and bolted, leaving me alone. I stayed, watching the thing. It tilted its head, mimicking me, and I felt a weird connection, like it was trying to understand me. Mom's voice broke the moment, calling me back for dinner. I climbed down, glancing up one last time. The creature was gone, but the branch swayed like it had just leapt away. That night, I couldn't sleep. The trailer felt too small, the walls too thin. I kept picturing those golden eyes. Around midnight, I saw a shadow flicker across my window, the one facing the woods. My heart skipped, but I crept over and peeked out. There it was, standing just beyond the glass, its fur catching the moonlight. 2 taller ones were with it, their eyes narrower, their bodies leaner, maybe 7 feet tall. They stared at me, not moving, like they were studying me. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. I felt excited, like I'd been chosen for something. The smaller one pressed closer, its breath fogging the glass, and I swore it looked like it was smiling. Then the bigger ones turned, and all 3 melted into the dark. I saw them again over the next few weeks, always at night, always watching. I'd wake to find them at the window, their silhouettes blending with the trees. I started leaving drawings on the sill, stick figures of me and them, and sometimes they'd be gone by morning, like they'd taken them. Mom thought I was making it up when I told her, said I was dreaming, but I knew better. Those eyes weren't something you could invent. We moved away when I was 8, to a city where the nights were loud with cars, not crickets. The last night in Green Hollow, I saw them one more time. I pressed my face to the window, tears blurring my vision, and the small one was there, its eyes softer than before. It raised a hand, almost like a wave, and I did the same. Then they were gone, swallowed by the forest. I still think about them, those strange watchers in the woods. Part of me hopes they're still out there, waiting for me to come back. It was the 1st of August, 2009, and I decided to take a walk near my home in Cedar Vale, Kansas. The countryside was quiet, all rolling fields and gravel roads that crunched underfoot. I grabbed my music player, a bottle of water, and headed out around 7 in the evening, the sky still bright with summer light. My plan was to loop down Quarry Road, a half-paved stretch that turned to gravel a mile in. It was my favorite route, peaceful and empty, just me and the hum of cicadas. As I walked, the sun dipped lower, painting the fields gold. I reached the gravel part of the road just as dusk settled, the air cooling against my skin. A neighbor's dog started barking wildly, its chain rattling somewhere off to the left. I figured it was chasing a rabbit or maybe a coyote, so I kept going, my music low enough to hear the world around me. But then a smell hit me. Foul, like wet fur mixed with rotting garbage. It grew stronger with every step, making my nose wrinkle. I slowed down, scanning the fields, but saw nothing but swaying grass and distant trees. I stopped under a dim street lamp near an old trailer to switch songs, the light barely reaching the road. That's when I noticed movement in the ditch to my right. At first, I thought it was a tree shifting in the breeze, but then it stood up, tall, at least 10 feet. its body covered in reddish-brown hair that gleamed faintly in the lamplight. Its head was oval, no neck, just broad shoulders that seemed to swallow the darkness. It faced away from me, unaware I was there, its arms hanging limp like they were too heavy. My mouth went dry and I stood frozen, my music player slipping from my fingers to the gravel. The thing turned slightly, and I caught a glimpse of its profile. Flat, featureless, like a mask carved from wood. My legs screamed to run, but I couldn't move, pinned by the weight of its presence. It stepped out of the ditch, moving on two legs with a slow, deliberate stride, and crossed into the field. The grass parted around it, bending under some invisible force. Then it stopped, turned its head fully toward me, and I felt its gaze, heavy and cold, like it was peeling me apart. A scream tore through the air, not mine, but a sound so raw it shook my bones, high and guttural like a warning. I ran. My feet pounded the gravel, my breath ragged, the smell still thick in my throat. I didn't look back, but I felt it watching, its presence lingering like a shadow stitched to my back. When I burst through my front door, Mom was in the kitchen. She said I looked like death, my face pale, my shirt soaked with sweat. I told her what I saw, but she brushed it off, said it was just my mind playing tricks in the dark. I didn't argue. I locked my bedroom door that night, the scream still echoing in my head. The next day, I went to town for groceries and overheard folks talking at the store. A farmer down the road had lost 2 calves the night before. They'd found the pens broken, trees snapped like twigs leading to the woods. The ground was torn up, like something heavy had barreled through. I didn't say a word, but I knew it was no bear or coyote. Whatever I saw on Quarry Road wasn't just passing through. It was hunting. I still walk that road sometimes, but never after sunset, and I keep a knife in my pocket, though I know it wouldn't do much against something like that. It was around the 15th of July, 1993, when I was 12, and my church group took us to a campground near Pine Ridge, Kentucky, for a youth retreat. The place was huge, miles of dense woods, steep hills, and creeks that gurgled like they were whispering secrets. We spent the day hiking and singing, but as dusk fell, the counselors decided to play a game called Capture the Flag in the Forest. The light was fading, the sky turning a deep purple, and I felt a prickle of unease, like the woods were watching me. I chose to hide just inside the tree line, behind a thick oak with moss clinging to its bark. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. I crouched low, my sneakers sinking into the soft ground, waiting for the game to unfold. My eyes adjusted to the dimness, picking out shadows that seemed to shift just beyond my sight. The other kids' laughter echoed faintly, but it felt far away, like I'd slipped into a different world. Then I heard it, twigs snapping, not far off. I figured it was another kid sneaking through the woods, so I stayed still, holding my breath. But the sound didn't stop. It was steady, deliberate, like something heavy moving through the underbrush. A smell hit me, musky, like wet fur mixed with something sharp and metallic. My heart started racing, and I pressed myself closer to the tree, the bark rough against my palms. I peered toward the noise and saw them. 2 shapes, maybe 30 yards away, moving down the bank of a shallow creek. They were tall, at least 6 feet, their bodies covered in dark, matted hair that blended with the shadows. Their arms were long, swinging loosely, and their heads were broad, with no necks I could make out. They moved with an eerie grace, like they belonged to the forest in a way I didn't. I blinked hard, thinking my eyes were playing tricks. But they were still there, real as the ground under me. The shapes stopped at the creek's edge, kneeling to scoop water with their hands. The way they drank, slow, almost ritualistic, made my skin crawl. I caught a glimpse of their eyes, glinting faintly like coins catching moonlight. They didn't make a sound, not a grunt or a rustle. But I felt their presence, heavy and knowing, like they sensed me hiding. My chest tightened, and I realized I was barely breathing, afraid even a whisper of air would give me away. I don't know how long I watched them. My body frozen, my mind screaming to run, but my legs refusing to move. The woods seemed to close in, the trees leaning closer, their branches like fingers brushing my neck. Finally, the shapes stood, their movements fluid, and climbed back up the bank. They vanished into the dark, leaving only the faint ripple of water in the creek. I waited, counting my heartbeats, until I was sure they were gone. Then I bolted, my sneakers slipping on roots as I ran toward the cabins, the game forgotten. When I reached the main lodge, my sister was there, waiting for the others. She saw my face, pale, sweaty, and knew something was wrong. I told her about the shapes, my voice shaking, but I made her swear not to tell the group. I was afraid they'd laugh or think I was crazy. The counselors called us in soon after, and I sat by the fire, staring into the flames, replaying those glinting eyes in my mind. That night, I barely slept, jumping at every creak of the cabin, half expecting to see those shapes at the window. I've never gone back to Pine Ridge, and I don't talk about that night much. But I know what I saw wasn't human. The woods hold things we don't understand, things that watch us just as closely as we watch them. And sometimes, I still feel that musky scent in my nightmares, like they're not done with me yet. Back in the late 1970s, my family bought an old farmhouse in Black Hollow, Vermont, a place built in 1880, nestled in a valley surrounded by jagged hills. It was our escape from the city, a weekend retreat with 7 acres of wildflowers and a creek that ran clear as glass. The house was a fixer-upper, with creaky floors and windows that rattled in the wind, but it felt like home. My sister Clara and I loved the drive up, even if it took 4 hours through winding roads. One night, we arrived late, around 9 on the 10th of October. The sky was heavy, no moon, just a blanket of clouds that swallowed the stars. Clara and I were in the kitchen at the back of the house, eating peanut butter sandwiches at a wobbly table. The windows faced a steep drop to the creek, the glass reflecting our tired faces. Mom and Dad were in the living room, their voices a soft murmur over the clink of their glasses. I was staring out the window, chewing slowly, when something caught my eye. At first, it was just a shadow, a flicker in the dark beyond the glass. I thought it was a trick of the light, maybe a branch swaying. But then it moved closer, and I saw it, a face, huge and broad, pressed against the window 12 feet away. It was ape-like, with no neck, just shoulders that stretched beyond the frame. Its hair was a strange reddish-orange, glowing faintly in the kitchen's light, and its eyes were black, empty pools that seemed to suck in the world. There was no expression, no hint of what it wanted, just a stillness that made my blood run cold. I froze, my sandwich halfway to my mouth, my heart slamming against my ribs. Clara followed my gaze and gasped, her chair scraping as she stood. The thing didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, its breath fogging the glass in slow, deliberate puffs. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt sealed shut. Finally, I managed a yell, calling for Mom and Dad. Their footsteps pounded down the hall, but by the time they reached us, the face was gone. The window empty except for a faint smear where its breath had been. Dad grabbed a flashlight, and I followed him outside, my legs shaky. The ground was hard from an early frost, no tracks to be found, but I noticed something. The kitchen window was high, set above the exposed basement level because of the hill the house was built into. Whatever that thing was, it had to be over 9 feet tall to peer through like that. The air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath, and I kept glancing at the creek, half expecting those black eyes to glint back at me. Back inside, Mom and Dad didn't believe us. They said it was probably a bear, or our imaginations running wild in the dark. Clara and I knew better, but we didn't argue. 2 weeks later, I overheard Dad talking about a local paper he'd read. A farmer nearby had seen something breaking into his barn, stealing tools and grain. He described it as big, hairy, with reddish fur that stood out against the snow. I didn't say anything, but my stomach twisted. That night still haunts me. Every time I close my eyes, I see that face, waiting just beyond the glass, like it's etched into my soul. It was the 25th of January, 1967, and I was in my kitchen in Willow Bend, New Hampshire, washing dishes after dinner. The house was lively. My parents and 7 kids sprawled across the living room, laughing over a board game. I was 40, a mother trying to keep order, but that night felt heavier than usual, like a storm was brewing inside the walls. The clock showed 6:30, and the winter dark pressed against the windows, cold seeping through the panes. The lights flickered, just a quick stutter, but enough to make me pause, my hands dripping in the sink. Then a red glow spilled through the kitchen window, pulsing like a heartbeat. My skin prickled, and I dried my hands, stepping closer to the glass. I thought it might be a car's taillights, but the road was too far off. The kids started whining, their voices sharp with nerves, and I turned to calm them, my heart picking up speed. That's when my dad shuffled in, his face tight, saying he'd seen something outside, figures moving toward the house. I peered out again, and my breath caught. 5 shapes were hopping across the snow, not walking but gliding, their bodies small and thin under the red light. They reached the kitchen door, and before I could scream, they passed through it, through solid wood, like it was nothing. My family froze, their eyes glassy, caught in some invisible grip. The figures were short, the tallest maybe 5 feet, their heads pear-shaped with wide black eyes that seemed to swallow the room. Their mouths were slits, their hands 3-fingered, and they wore blue suits that shimmered like oil on water. One of them, the leader, locked eyes with me. I felt its thoughts in my head, cold and clear, telling me to stay calm, that they meant no harm. I wanted to run, to grab my kids, but my body wouldn't move. The leader floated closer, its boots never touching the floor, and I felt a strange peace, like sinking into deep water. Another figure led my dad away, his face blank, while the rest hovered around me. They released my youngest, Ellie, from the trance, and she stood there, blinking, unharmed but dazed. Then they took me. I don't know how we left the house, but I was suddenly outside, the air biting my skin. A saucer-shaped craft waited on a hill, its metal skin glowing faintly, about 20 feet wide. I floated inside, my feet dangling, and found myself in a bright room with no corners. They laid me on a table, my limbs heavy, and ran strange tools over me, lights that burned, needles that pricked. One test sent pain shooting through my chest, but afterward, I felt a rush, like waking from a dream about God. The leader's voice filled my mind again, saying they were studying us, preparing for something big. I saw visions, flashes of stars, cities in ruins, things I couldn't understand. Hours later, 4, I think, they brought me back. 2 of them walked me to the house, their hands cold on my arms. My family was still frozen, untouched, except for one figure waiting by the door, watching silently. They released everyone as they left, the red light fading into the night. I tried to forget, but pieces kept coming back. The glow, the eyes, the pain. Years later, I wrote to a scientist hoping for answers, but he dismissed me. Others dug deeper, tested me, hypnotized me. They said I wasn't lying, that Ellie remembered too. But knowing that doesn't make it easier. I still check the sky at night, waiting for that red light to return. I was 22, a deputy in Cedar Vale, Nebraska, working the night shift on the 3rd of December, 1967. The roads were quiet, just me and my cruiser rolling along Highway 12, the stars sharp in the cold sky. Around 2 a.m, I was near the junction with Highway 19 when I spotted red lights blinking low over a field. I thought it was a truck broken down, maybe a farmer hauling late, so I turned onto the smaller road to check. As I got closer, my headlights hit something that wasn't a truck. It was a disc, metallic, hovering 8 feet off the ground, its surface polished like a mirror. Red light pulsed from round windows, casting eerie shadows on the frost-covered grass. It was maybe 40 feet across, with a walkway circling its edge and what looked like legs tucked beneath. My stomach dropped, and I stopped the car, my hands tight on the wheel. This was no machine I'd ever seen. I sat there, engine idling, trying to make sense of it. Then the thing moved, flames licking from its underside, and it rose higher, slow and deliberate. A high-pitched whine filled the air, not loud but piercing, like it was inside my skull. My cruiser's engine sputtered and died, the radio spitting static before going silent. I felt exposed, like the night itself was watching me. That's when something emerged from the disc, a white shape, vague and shimmering, floating toward me. It didn't walk. It drifted, like smoke caught in a breeze. I reached for my gun, but my arm wouldn't move, pinned by some force I couldn't see. The shape stopped a few feet away, and I felt it in my head. Words, not spoken but thought, telling me to stay calm, that they were friendly. I saw figures inside the disc now, shadows behind the windows, tall and thin with eyes that gleamed like wet glass. They said their ship ran on power from our lines, that they had a base somewhere far off, a place called Solara. I didn't want to believe it, but the weight of their presence made it real. The shape told me not to draw my weapon, and I felt my fear dull, like a blade being sheathed. Then it was gone, and the disc shot upward, passing over my car with a rush of warm air before vanishing into the sky. I sat there, shaking, until I realized I needed to move. I drove back to the station, my hands trembling on the wheel. When I checked the clock, it was 3 a.m. I'd lost nearly an hour, though it felt like minutes. I logged it, called it a flying craft, half joking to keep my sanity. But the next day, headaches started, sharp and relentless, and a red mark bloomed on my neck, hot to the touch. I felt sick, like my body wasn't mine. Weeks later, I agreed to hypnosis at a university, hoping for answers. Under trance, I remembered more. The shape touching my arm, its skin cold and slick, showing me a glowing engine inside the craft, a rod pulsing with light. They'd said they'd be back, but not for decades, and that I'd forget until they needed me to remember. The town turned on me after that. People laughed, called me crazy. My chief quit, and they made me acting chief. But the whispers and stares wore me down. Someone torched my cruiser one night, and my wife left, saying she couldn't live with the rumors. I resigned 2 months later, my life unraveling like a bad dream. Hypnosis brought back more, details of their faces, eyeless but knowing, and a warning about our world's future. I don't know if they were real, or if I broke under the weight of that night, but I still wake up sometimes, feeling that whine in my skull, wondering if they're watching. It was the 7th of August, 1968, and I was 16, working as a maintenance helper at a summer camp near Clearwater Lake, Michigan. The place was quiet that day, most of the campers off in town for a swim meet, leaving just me and Sarah, a 19-year-old water ski instructor, to kill time. We were out on the boat dock, the late afternoon sun warm on our faces, the lake stretching flat and silver before us. I was tossing pebbles into the water, watching ripples spread, when a bright light caught my eye in the sky. At first, I thought it was a star, maybe Venus shining early, but it was too big, too steady. Sarah saw it too, her shadow falling still beside me. The light grew closer, dropping low over the lake, and I realized it wasn't a star. It was a saucer, smooth and glowing, moving like it had a mind of its own. My pulse quickened, but I couldn't look away. The craft stopped, hovering, and 3 smaller lights broke off, darting across the water in sharp zigzags, looping like fireflies with purpose. The main craft vanished upward, leaving the smaller ones to dance. I stood rooted, my sneakers glued to the dock's weathered boards. The lights came closer, forming a triangle, their glow pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat I could feel in my chest. They moved with precision, one peeling off to hover just above the lake's surface, skimming it without a ripple. I heard a hum, not loud, but deep, vibrating through my bones, like 1,000 voices chanting just out of earshot. My excitement turned to dread, the air growing heavy, pressing against my lungs. The lone light drifted toward us, close enough that I saw shapes inside it. 2 figures, small and childlike, their heads too big, their necks long and thin. Their eyes were massive, wrapping around their skulls, glinting like polished stone. I felt them watching me, not just seeing but knowing, like they were peeling back my thoughts. I mirrored one's movement, raising my hand when it did, and it tilted its head, curious. My skin crawled, but I couldn't break away, caught in some silent exchange. The craft floated nearer, now just above the dock, its underside smooth and featureless. A beam shot out, pale and cold, wrapping around Sarah and me. I grabbed her arm, pulling her back, and we hit the deck hard, my elbows scraping wood. I screamed inside my head, refusing to go, terrified of being taken. The beam flickered and the craft drifted back, its light dimming. Sarah sat frozen, her eyes blank, while I scrambled to my knees, panting. The craft rose, flashed once, twice, then shot into the sky, gone in a blink. Darkness swallowed the lake. I don't know how long we sat there, the camp silent except for the lap of water against the dock. When the swim team's voices finally reached us, laughing as they returned, I realized hours had passed, far more than made sense. Sarah and I didn't speak of it, not then. We packed up when camp ended, went our separate ways. But 5 years later, nightmares started, flashes of that light, those eyes. By 10 years, they were unbearable, so I tracked down a researcher in Chicago. Hypnosis brought it back. I saw myself lifted into the craft, weightless, my body numb. Sarah was on a table, lights scanning her, while those beings took samples. Skin, blood, things I couldn't name. Their touch was damp, their fingers webbed, and they spoke without words, saying they wanted peace, a world without our chaos. Sarah's memories matched mine when she went under later. Same cold table, same pinching pain. Others at camp that summer saw lights too. Some even claimed they'd been taken earlier. I don't go near lakes anymore. At night, I check the sky, half expecting those lights to find me again. It was the 11th of October, 1973, and I was 19, fishing with my Uncle Ray on the Blackwater River near Moss Point, Alabama. We were night owls, always out late, our rods propped on the bank, the water dark and still under a sliver of moon. Ray was 42, a quiet man who taught me everything about the river, its currents, its fish, its secrets. That night, the air was warm, thick with the smell of mud and moss, and we sat in comfortable silence, our lantern casting a soft glow. Around 10, a strange buzz cut through the quiet, not cicadas, but sharper, like a wire humming with electricity. I glanced at Ray, but he was already looking up, his face tight. Across the river, maybe 10 yards away, a light appeared, bluish, pulsing, hovering just above the water. It came from an egg-shaped thing, no bigger than a car, its surface smooth and metallic. My heart lurched. I wanted to stand, to run, but my body felt heavy, like the air itself was holding me down. A door slid open on the craft, silent and smooth, and 3 figures floated out. They didn't walk. They glided, their legs dangling uselessly, their bodies thin and gray, about 5 feet tall. Their heads were bulbous with no necks, and where their faces should have been were slits for mouths and pointed stubs where noses or ears might go. Their eyes were black, endless, reflecting the lantern's light like oil. I felt Ray tense beside me, his breath shallow, but neither of us moved, pinned by something stronger than fear. 2 of them came for Ray, their hands wrapping around his arms, lifting him like he weighed nothing. The third reached for me, its fingers cold and rubbery on my skin. I tried to scream, but my voice died, and my vision blurred as I slumped to the ground, darkness swallowing me. When I came to, I was inside the craft, floating in a bright room with no walls, just light that seemed to come from everywhere. Ray was there, suspended, his eyes wide but unseeing, while a device like a giant eye scanned him, humming softly. I couldn't move, my body numb, but I felt everything, their hands, their tools, the way they watched me. They didn't speak, but I heard them in my head, calm and clinical, saying they needed to understand us, to test us. The eye device passed over me, its light burning my skin, and I saw flashes, cities, oceans, things I couldn't place. It lasted maybe 20 minutes, though time felt warped, like a dream stretching too long. Then I was back on the bank, Ray beside me, his face wet with tears, praying into the dirt. The craft rose, silent now, and vanished straight up, leaving the river black and empty. We sat there, shaking, until we could stand. Ray didn't want to tell anyone, afraid they'd think we were drunk or worse, but I felt we had to. We tried the airbase first, but they sent us to the sheriff. The station was cold, the deputies skeptical, their eyes narrowing as I described the figures. They put us in a room to talk, probably hoping we'd slip up, but we didn't. Word got out anyway, first to the local paper, then further, until strangers were calling us crazy. Later, men in suits came, researchers, they said, from some university. They tested us, asked questions, even used machines to check if we were lying. They believed us, or at least said they did, claiming something not from here had been on that river. I still see those eyes in my dreams, feel that buzz in my skull. Ray never fished again, and I can't go near the Blackwater without tasting fear. Whatever they were, they left something in me, a mark I can't shake, like they're still watching, waiting for the right moment to come back. It was the 13th of August, 1975, and I was 35, an Air Force mechanic stationed near White Sands, New Mexico. I'd driven out to the desert that night to watch a meteor shower, something I did to clear my head after long shifts. Around 1 a.m, I was sprawled on a blanket, the stars blazing above, when a glow caught my eye. Not a meteor, but something steady, metallic, dropping low over the dunes about 300 feet away. I sat up, my pulse quickening. It was a saucer, maybe 50 feet long, its surface shimmering like liquid silver, wobbling as it descended. My first thought was a test craft. White Sands was full of secrets, but this was no prototype I'd ever seen. I stood, my boots sinking into the sand, and watched it hover, silent except for a faint hum that vibrated in my chest. Fear hit me hard, sharp and cold, and I stumbled back toward my truck, fumbling for the keys. The engine wouldn't turn over, the dashboard dark, like something had drained it dead. I cursed under my breath, my hands shaking, and then I heard it. A high-pitched whine, piercing my skull. The saucer was closer now, maybe 70 feet away, floating steady, a window glowing on its side. Shadows moved inside, humanoid but wrong, their outlines too thin, too tall. My body started to go numb, my fingers tingling, and I gripped the steering wheel to stay grounded. The whine stopped, and I saw 2 figures gliding toward me, about 6 feet tall, their black suits clinging like a second skin. Their faces were bare, no hair, no lips, just round eyes and a ridge where a nose should be. I swung at the air, desperate to fight. But my arms felt like lead, and I slumped against the seat, my vision swimming. Next thing I knew, I was inside the craft, lying on a smooth table, my limbs locked in place. The air was cold, sterile, smelling faintly of ozone. A shorter figure stood over me, its suit silver, its eyes larger than the others, like black mirrors reflecting my fear. It didn't speak, but I felt its thoughts, calm, curious, asking if I'd cooperate. I couldn't answer, my throat tight, but my panic eased, like they'd flipped a switch in my brain. They ran a rod over my back, warm and buzzing, and my body loosened, though I still couldn't move freely. The leader showed me a machine, a long rod with glowing holes, pulsing like it was alive. They said their main ship waited above, that they'd stay hidden for 20 years, that I'd forget until they were ready. I woke in my truck, the desert dark again, the saucer gone. My watch said 3 a.m, 90 minutes lost, though it felt like seconds. I drove home, my hands trembling, and collapsed into bed, but sleep didn't come. The next day, pain flared in my back, sharp and deep, and a rash spread across my arms, red and itching. I saw a doctor, but he had no answers, just suggested rest. Weeks later, I tried self-hypnosis, something I'd read about, hoping to piece it together. Fragments came back, their damp touch, the hum of their tools, a vision of Earth from above, fragile and small. They'd studied me, marked me, left something in my mind I couldn't shake. I told a friend, a civilian, and he got me in touch with a researcher. Tests showed I wasn't lying, but some doubted me, said I'd mixed up distances, exaggerated details. I didn't care. I knew what I saw, felt their eyes on me, still feel them sometimes when the desert's too quiet. I don't watch the stars anymore, not without checking my locks first. It was the 5th of April, 1991, and I was a university student in Bridgeport, Maine, heading home for a weekend with my parents. I'd caught a late bus, an old school rig with creaky seats, and settled in the back, my backpack beside me. The bus was nearly empty, just a couple up front near the driver, their voices a soft hum over the engine's drone. I leaned against the window, watching the highway slide by, the night black except for the occasional glow of a passing factory. We were climbing a hill, the bus groaning under the strain, when I passed the old tire plant, its neon sign flickering in the dark. I yawned, my reflection pale in the glass, and then it hit. A feeling, sharp and wrong, like the air had thickened. My stomach twisted, and for no reason, I imagined a crowd laughing at me, their voices echoing inside my skull. I blinked, and the world shifted. The bus was suddenly a mile back, rolling past the tire plant again, the same neon flicker, the same curve in the road. My heart slammed against my ribs. I gripped the seat, my knuckles white, and glanced at the couple up front. They'd been chatting before, loud enough to hear, but now they sat silent, their heads bowed like they'd felt it too. I wanted to stand, to ask the driver what happened, but my legs felt heavy, pinned by the weight of something I couldn't name. The bus kept moving, steady, like nothing was wrong, but the air was different now, colder, sharper, like it carried a secret. I pressed my face to the window, scanning the dark, half expecting to see something watching from the roadside. The factory passed again, its sign blinking in the same rhythm, and I counted the seconds, trying to anchor myself. My reflection looked back, but it felt off, like it wasn't quite me. Eyes too wide, mouth too tight. I forced myself to breathe, to focus on the hum of the engine, but that feeling lingered, heavy and alive, like I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. When we finally stopped at my town station, I grabbed my bag and approached the driver, my voice shaky as I asked if he'd noticed anything strange. He didn't look at me, just stared at the wheel, his hands tight on it. He muttered something about things happening sometimes, his voice low, like he was afraid to say more. I stepped off, the night air cold against my sweat-damp skin, and glanced back. The couple was gone, the bus empty except for the driver, his silhouette hunched in the dim light. I walked home, the streets too quiet, every shadow making me flinch. My parents were asleep when I got in, and I didn't tell them, not then, not ever. But I couldn't shake it. The next day, I took a different route back, avoiding that highway. I started noticing things after, clocks running slow, mirrors showing flickers of movement when I was alone. Whatever happened on that bus wasn't just a glitch. It was a door, and I'm terrified it's still open, waiting for me to step through again. It was the 20th of October, 1994, and I was driving home with my boyfriend Tom to Pine Hollow, Oregon, after a long week. We were on Cedar Lane, a 4-mile stretch of curvy 2-lane road that cut through the hills outside town. It was a Friday evening, the sky dimming to a soft gray, and I was behind the wheel of our old sedan, the radio humming faintly. I'd just glanced at the clock, 6:24, the amber digits glowing, when I noticed how quiet the road was. No cars passed us, not one, which felt strange for a route this busy. I mentioned it to Tom, my voice light, but he just shrugged, his eyes on the trees flashing by. The road twisted ahead, shadows lengthening, and I kept driving, the tires humming on the asphalt. Then it happened. The car died. No sputter, no warning, just silence. The pedal went stiff under my foot, the headlights blinked out, and we rolled to a stop. I turned the key, but nothing happened, the dashboard dark. Confusion hit me first. I knew we had gas, half a tank at least. But then a fog settled over my mind, thick and slow, like I drifted off without realizing. Tom frowned, asking what was wrong, but I couldn't answer, my thoughts sluggish, like wading through syrup. I coasted us onto a dirt shoulder, the car lurching as it settled. He jumped out, circling to my side, and opened the door. I slid over, letting him take the wheel, my hands trembling slightly. He cranked the key, and the engine roared back to life, like it had never failed. We pulled away, the headlights cutting through the dusk again, but something felt off, heavier, like the air itself was pressing down. I glanced at the clock. 6:36. 12 minutes gone, though it felt like 90 seconds at most. My stomach twisted, a nervous edge creeping in. Tom's jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the wheel, but he didn't say anything. I stared out the window, the trees blurring past, and noticed a flicker in the shadows. Something tall, thin, moving parallel to us, just beyond the light. I blinked, and it was gone. But my skin prickled, like eyes were boring into me from the dark. We didn't talk the rest of the drive, the silence thick between us. When we got home, I checked the car. Full tank, battery fine, no reason for it to die. That night, I couldn't sleep, replaying those lost minutes, the way the world had shifted. The next day, I drove Cedar Lane again, alone, and found a spot where the trees were bent. Branches snapped like something huge had pushed through. I don't know what stole that time, but I feel it still. A gap in my life, a shadow that follows me on quiet roads, waiting to swallow me again. I grew up in Dust Creek, Alabama, in the 1920s, a place where dirt roads and horse wagons were all we had. Electricity was rare, and life moved slow, tied to the land. I was 13 that summer, helping the women at the Miller farm shell peas on their wide front porch. It was the 10th of July, the sun high and fierce, the air buzzing with flies. We'd been at it since morning, our fingers stained green, baskets piling up around us. By mid-afternoon, I was sweaty, my back aching, when I glanced up and saw Mr. Miller riding toward the house on his gray mare. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a white flour sack slung across the saddle and a brown bag of groceries cradled in his arm. Dust kicked up behind him, the horse's hooves steady on the path. He stopped at the gate, waiting, and one of the boys, little Jamie, ran to open it. We all watched, expecting him to ride through, but then he was gone. Not a fade or a blur, just gone, horse and all, like the air had swallowed him. I froze, my hands full of peas, my breath stuck in my throat. The women gasped, some dropping their baskets, and then panic hit. We screamed, chairs tipping as we stumbled back, staring at the empty gate. The boy stood there, his hand still on the latch, his face white. For a moment we just sat, hearts pounding, trying to make sense of it. The air felt wrong, too still, like it was holding a secret. Mrs. Miller told Jamie to close the gate, her voice sharp, and we went back to shelling, though our hands shook. About 30 minutes later, I looked up again, and there he was. Mr. Miller, riding the same path, the same flour sack, the same brown bag, the same steady pace. My stomach dropped. He stopped at the gate again, waiting, but none of us moved. We stared, our breaths shallow, waiting for him to vanish. He didn't. Instead, he called out, his voice gruff, asking if someone would open the gate. Mrs. Miller nudged Jamie, and he did, slow and wary. Mr. Miller rode through, dismounted, and walked past us, oblivious, his boots heavy on the porch steps. We didn't tell him what we'd seen, couldn't find the words. That night, I lay awake, picturing him flickering out of existence, wondering if he'd really come back or if something else had taken his place. The next day, I asked my aunt about it, and she said the land around Dust Creek was old, full of echoes, times bleeding into each other. I started noticing things after that. Hoof prints in the yard that didn't match his horse, a faint whinny on windless nights. Whatever I saw that day wasn't just a trick. It was a warning, a glimpse of something the earth hadn't let go of, and I still feel its weight when I pass that gate. It was the 8th of June, 1999, and I was 8, playing in my front yard in Willow Creek, Texas, with my friend Ethan. The day was ordinary, hot and sticky, the kind where the sun baked the dirt until it cracked. Kids rode bikes up and down our driveway, their laughter bouncing off the houses, while Ethan and I sat under an oak, tossing a ball back and forth. The street was quiet otherwise, just the hum of cicadas and the occasional car rolling by. I was mid-throw when a blue sedan pulled up to the house across the road. A boy, maybe 10, skinny with messy hair, jumped out, yelling nonsense as he ran inside, his voice high and wild. I smirked, thinking he sounded like Ethan when he got excited. A minute later, a girl coasted down the driveway on her bike, her ponytail swinging, tires crunching gravel. I watched her disappear around the corner, then turned back to Ethan, ready to toss the ball again. But something shifted. A chill ran through me, sharp and sudden, like the air had turned inside out. I blinked, and it happened again. The same blue sedan rolled up, same spot, same slow stop. The same boy leapt out, hollering the exact same words, his voice echoing in my skull like a record stuck on repeat. He dashed inside, and there came the girl again, biking down the driveway, her wheels kicking up the same dust. My breath caught, my hands clammy around the ball. I looked at Ethan, his face pale, his eyes wide like he'd felt it too. The yard felt smaller, the shadows longer, like the world had folded over itself. I stood, my legs shaky, and scanned the street. The other kids kept riding, oblivious, their bikes looping in lazy circles. But that sedan, it was gone, then back, then gone again, flickering like a bad film reel. The boys' yells rang out a third time, fainter now, and the girl's bike rolled past once more, her shadow stretching too far, too thin. I felt eyes on me, not from the houses but from somewhere deeper. The trees, maybe, or the cracks in the earth. My stomach twisted and I wanted to run, but my feet stayed planted, rooted by fear. Ethan grabbed my arm, his grip tight, and I saw it too. A shimmer in the air where the sedan had been, like heat rising off pavement, but cold, wrong. The boy's voice cut off mid-shout, and the girl vanished mid-ride, her bike gone before it hit the turn. Silence fell, heavy and thick, the cicadas mute. I don't know how long we stood there, staring at nothing, but when I finally moved, my shadow lagged, trailing behind like it wasn't mine anymore. We didn't tell our parents. They wouldn't believe us. That night, I lay awake, the yard replaying in my head, those echoes looping until I couldn't tell what was real. The next day, I avoided the oak, kept inside, but I saw Ethan watching the street, his face drawn. Something had slipped that day, a crack in time that let me see too much. I still feel it sometimes. A stutter in the world, a shadow that moves when it shouldn't, waiting to pull me back into that loop. It was the 4th of September, 1952, and I was 6, walking to school in Ash Hollow, England, with my friend Peter. The town was small, all cobblestone and brick, and we took a shortcut past a new housing site, half-built frames and piles of lumber baking in the late summer sun. We stopped to watch the builders, their hammers flashing in the light, dust swirling around them. I liked the smell of sawdust, the promise of something new, but that day felt different, heavier, like the air was holding its breath. We turned down a narrow lane, one we'd taken 100 times, when I saw it. A cottage, old and crooked, its thatched roof sagging, its walls stained with moss. It hadn't been there before, not yesterday, not ever. An old woman stepped out, her face wrinkled like crumpled paper, her eyes sharp and bright. She waved us over, her voice soft, offering lemonade. I hesitated, but Peter tugged my arm, eager, and we followed her inside. The air was cool, musty, smelling of damp wood and something sweet, like rotting flowers. The room was dim, lit by a single lamp that flickered like it was alive. She handed us chipped mugs, the lemonade cold and tart, and I drank, watching her shuffle around, her shadow stretching too long across the floor. My head felt fuzzy, time slipping like sand through my fingers. I wanted to leave, but my legs wouldn't move, pinned by a weight I couldn't name. Peter sipped his drink, oblivious, while I stared at the walls, wood-warped, etched with faint scratches that looked like words I couldn't read. We thanked her and left, the door creaking shut behind us. The lane felt longer walking back, the sun lower than it should have been. When we reached school, the yard was empty, the bell silent. A teacher was locking up and I checked my watch. Nearly 4, though we'd left home at 1:30. The walk should have taken 20 minutes, not hours. My chest tightened, a cold sweat prickling my neck. Peter's eyes were wide, but he didn't speak, just stared back the way we'd come. The next day, we took the same route, needing to know. The cottage was gone. No roof, no walls, just empty grass between the new houses, like it had never existed. I asked my dad about it later, my voice small, and he frowned, saying an old widow's house had stood there decades ago, torn down before I was born. That night, I dreamed of her, those sharp eyes watching me through the dark, her shadow creeping closer. I woke tasting lemonade, my tongue bitter, and found scratches on my arm, faint but real. I don't walk that lane anymore. The builders finished the houses, but I swear I see her sometimes. A flicker in the windows, a shape in the dusk. Whatever we stepped into that day wasn't just lost time. It was hers, and I feel her still, tugging at me from a place I can't escape. It was the 15th of March, 1987, and I was 24, working late at a warehouse in Elmwood, Illinois. My shift ended at 11, and I caught the last train home, a rickety old commuter that rattled through the night. The station was deserted, just me and the cold wind whipping across the platform, I climbed aboard, settling into a worn seat near the back, the car empty except for a faint hum from the lights overhead. The train lurched forward, and I leaned against the window, watching the town blur into dark fields. I was half asleep, the rhythm of the tracks lulling me, when the train slowed near a crossing I knew well. Maple Road, a quiet stretch with a single blinking light. I glanced out, expecting the usual, empty pavement, maybe a stray cat. But instead, I saw a crowd. Dozens of people lined the tracks, their faces pale and still, staring straight at me. My heart jolted, sleep vanishing. They didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, their clothes old-fashioned, long coats, hats, like something from a history book. The train rolled past, and I pressed my face to the glass, my breath fogging it, trying to make sense of them. Then the train stopped, brakes hissing, though we weren't at a station. The lights flickered, dimming to a sickly yellow, and a chill seeped into the car, sharp against my skin. I stood, my legs unsteady, and peered down the aisle. The crowd was closer now, right outside the windows, their eyes locked on me, hollow, unblinking, like they weren't really there. My chest tightened, and I backed away, my sneakers squeaking on the floor. A shadow moved at the front of the car, tall and thin, but when I looked, nothing was there. Just empty seats and that hum, louder now, buzzing in my skull. The train jolted forward again, and I stumbled, grabbing a pole. The crowd vanished, swallowed by the dark, but the air stayed heavy, like it was watching me. I sat, my hands trembling, and checked my watch. 11:45, though it felt like hours had passed. The rest of the ride was quiet. Too quiet. And when we pulled into my stop, I bolted, not looking back. The platform was empty, the night silent, but I felt them still, those eyes lingering on me like a weight I couldn't shake. The next day, I asked a coworker about the train, my voice shaky. He frowned, saying no one else had seen a crowd, but he'd heard stories. An old derailment near Maple Road, decades back, passengers lost in a wreck no one explained. I stopped taking the late train after that, started driving instead. But sometimes, passing that crossing, I see shadows in the corner of my eye. Still, silent, waiting. Whatever I saw wasn't just a trick of the night. It was a memory the tracks won't let go, and I'm afraid it's claimed me too. It was the 6th of December, 2001, and I was 32, living alone in a cabin near Frost Hollow, Montana. The place was remote, tucked into the pines, a mile from the nearest neighbor. I'd moved there for quiet after a messy divorce, and that winter, the snow came early, blanketing everything in white. I was outside that evening, splitting logs by the shed, the air crisp and biting, my breath puffing in clouds. The sun was gone, the sky a deep gray, and I was ready to head in when I heard it. Footsteps crunching in the snow. I stopped, my axe mid-swing, and listened. The sound was steady, deliberate, coming from the trees beyond the clearing. My first thought was a deer or a bear, but it was too rhythmic, too human. I called out, my voice sharp, expecting a hunter or a neighbor, but no one answered. The crunching kept on, closer now, circling the edge of the woods. My pulse quickened, and I gripped the axe tighter, scanning the dark. The lantern by the shed cast a weak glow, barely reaching the trees, but I saw nothing. No shape, no tracks, just shadows shifting in the wind. I grabbed the lantern and stepped toward the sound, my boots sinking into the snow. The footsteps stopped, sudden and sharp, like they'd heard me coming. I froze, my breath shallow, the silence heavier than before. Then I saw it. A single print in the snow, deep and wide, maybe 10 feet from me, human-shaped but too big. The toes splayed like claws. My stomach dropped, and I swung the lantern around, searching, but the woods were empty, the pines still as stone. The crunching started again, faster now, moving away, then back, like it was playing with me. I backed toward the cabin, my heart hammering, the axe slippery in my hands. The light caught another print, then another, forming a jagged path that looped around the shed and stopped at my porch. I ran the last few steps, slamming the door behind me, my fingers fumbling with the lock. Inside, I stood by the window, peering out, the glass cold against my palm. The footsteps circled once more, faint but clear, then faded into the night. I didn't sleep, kept the fire roaring, the axe by my side. The next morning I checked outside. The prints were gone, smoothed over like the snow had healed itself. But the air felt wrong, charged with something I couldn't name. I told a ranger later, and he shrugged, said it was probably a prank, but his eyes didn't meet mine. I found an old book in town after that, stories from trappers, things in the woods, tall and silent, leaving marks that vanish. I don't split wood at dusk anymore, and I keep the curtains drawn. Those steps still echo in my head, closer some nights, like whatever it was hasn't forgotten me. It was the 9th of April, 2005, and I was 21, helping my parents clean out their new house in Redstone, Colorado. They'd bought the place cheap, an old Victorian with peeling paint and a sagging porch, planning to fix it up. That day I was in the attic, sorting through boxes of junk left by the previous owners. The air was thick with dust, the single bulb swinging overhead casting long shadows across the rafters. I was alone, my parents downstairs, when I found it. A tall mirror, its frame carved with twisting vines, propped against the wall. I stepped closer, wiping grime from the glass with my sleeve. My reflection stared back, pale and tired. But something felt off. The edges of my face blurred, like the mirror couldn't hold me steady. I leaned in, squinting, and the light flickered, plunging the attic into gloom for a heartbeat. When it steadied, I saw it. A figure behind me, faint but there, its outline tall and thin, draped in a long coat. My breath stopped and I spun around, expecting someone, something, but the attic was empty, just boxes and cobwebs. I turned back, my heart thudding, and the figure was clearer now, closer, its face hidden in shadow, its shoulders hunched like it was leaning toward me. I stumbled back, my foot catching on a crate, and the mirror wobbled, the glass rippling like water. A smell hit me. Damp earth, old cloth, something sour, and I froze, watching the figure raise a hand, its fingers long and crooked, reaching out from the reflection. My own hand twitched, mirroring it against my will, and I felt a pull, like the mirror was tugging me in. I yanked away, my sleeve snagging on a nail, and ran for the stairs, my pulse roaring in my ears. I didn't look back, didn't stop until I was downstairs, panting, my parents staring at me like I'd lost my mind. I told them about the mirror, my voice shaking, but they brushed it off. Old houses, overactive imagination. That night, I heard it. Soft footsteps overhead, slow and deliberate, pacing where the mirror stood. I didn't sleep, kept my door locked, the sound looping in my head. The next day, I went back up, needing proof. The mirror was there, untouched, but my reflection was wrong. My eyes too dark, my smile too wide, like it wasn't me. I covered it with a tarp, dragged it to the curb, and watched the trash truck take it away. The footsteps stopped, but I still feel it sometimes. A chill when I pass a mirror, a shadow that lingers too long. Whatever was in that glass didn't just leave, it's waiting, and I'm terrified it's found another way to watch me. It was the 12th of November, 1992, and I was 38, a park ranger stationed at Elk Ridge, Wyoming, during a brutal snowstorm. The cabin I worked from was small, perched on a bluff overlooking miles of forest, the wind howling outside like a living thing. My shift was quiet, just me, a thermos of coffee, and the radio crackling with static as I logged weather updates. The The storm had grounded most activity, and I was ready to hunker down until morning. Around midnight, the radio hissed louder, cutting through the wind's roar. I adjusted the dial, expecting a routine call from base, but instead, a voice broke through. Low, garbled, like it was underwater. It repeated a string of numbers. 3, 7, 9, pause, 3, 7, 9, over and over. No inflection, no urgency, just cold precision. My skin prickled, and I grabbed the mic, asking who was there. But the voice didn't stop, didn't waver, looping like a broken machine. I checked the frequency, unlisted, not ours, and my stomach tightened. The cabin's lights dimmed, the generator stuttering, and I glanced out the window. Snow whipped past, but something moved in the dark. A shape, vague and tall, cutting through the storm like it didn't feel it. I squinted, my breath fogging the glass, and saw it again. Closer, maybe 50 yards out, its outline jagged against the white. The radio kept chanting, 3, 7, 9, and I felt a hum in my chest, syncing with the numbers, pulling at my thoughts. My hand hovered over the rifle by the desk, but I couldn't move, pinned by a dread I couldn't name. The shape stopped, just beyond the light's reach, and the radio went dead. Silence flooding the cabin. I grabbed the rifle, my hands slick with sweat, and stepped to the door, cracking it open. The wind hit me hard, snow stinging my face, but I saw it, tall, maybe 8 feet, its body angular, its head cocked like it was listening. Its eyes flashed, bright and unblinking, cutting through the storm, and I slammed the door, bolting it, my breath ragged. The hum was louder now, inside my skull, and the numbers echoed, 3, 7, 9, like a code I was meant to crack. I stayed awake, rifle in hand until dawn broke, the storm easing. The shape was gone. No tracks in the snow, no sign it had been there. The radio stayed silent, but my logs were off. 2 hours missing, though I'd felt every second. I reported it to base, kept it vague, and they blamed interference, a glitch. But I found an old journal later, left by a ranger decades back. Same numbers, same storm, a figure that watched and vanished. I don't work nights alone anymore. That signal wasn't random. It was for me, and I still hear it some nights, faint, waiting to finish what it started.